3 days. That's how late I was. 3 days after my father died, I stood at his grave holding a letter, the last one he'd ever write, that said there's nothing to forgive. You were always my girl. But there was everything to forgive. Because 10 years earlier, I walked out of his house, chose a man I barely knew over the family who raised me, and never looked back. My name is Lena. I'm 42 years old. And this is the story of how one choice, one single moment of wanting to be loved, cost me a decade of my life, my identity, and the last words I'd ever hear from my father. The worst part? I lived 5 miles away the entire time. 5 miles. Close enough to walk home. Too afraid to take a single step. This is about a red scarf, a toxic mother-in-law, a weak husband, and the moment I finally realized some love isn't love at all. It's a prison you build yourself. If you've ever lost yourself trying to make someone love you, this story is for you. And before this story ends, you'll see me do something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. Stay with me. I need you to understand who I was before Daniel. Before the mansion. Before Evelyn. Before I became someone I didn't recognize. I grew up in a tiny coastal town, the kind where everyone knows your name, your business, and exactly how much your father makes fishing every season. We weren't rich. We never would be. My father, Thomas, left for the docks at 4 in the morning every day, hands rough and weathered, smelling like salt and hard work. He'd come home exhausted, but always had energy to ask about my day. How was school, Lena Bear? He'd ruffle my hair. Anyone give you trouble? Want me to scare them? I'd laugh. Dad, I'm 25. I can handle it. I know you can, he'd say. But you shouldn't have to. That's what fathers are for. My mother, Claire, ran a tiny bakery in town. Nothing fancy, just bread, pastries, the occasional wedding cake. The whole house smelled like cinnamon and butter. Warmth, comfort, home. And then there was Eli, my little brother. 3 years younger, protective like he was the older one, constantly getting into fights defending my honor when kids said we were poor or simple. They don't know anything, Lena, he'd say, ice pack on his bruised eye. We're rich in the ways that matter. I didn't believe him then. But God, I wish I had. I was 25 when I met Daniel. I was working at a cafe in the city, just 30 minutes from home, but worlds apart. I'd taken the job to save money, maybe go to college, prove I was more than just Thomas's daughter from the fishing village. Daniel walked in wearing a suit that probably cost more than my rent. Tall, confident, the kind of handsome that makes you forget your own name. He ordered black coffee, made a joke, smiled at me like I was the only person in the room. I was hooked instantly. He came back every day for a week. Always the same order. Always that same smile. You know, he said on day 7, I don't actually like coffee. I laughed. Then why do you keep ordering it? Because the girl who serves it makes it taste like the best thing I've ever had. Cheesy? Absolutely. But when you're 25 and no one's ever looked at you like that, like you're magic, cheesy works. We dated for 6 months. 6 months of him picking me up in his expensive car, taking me to restaurants where I didn't know which fork to use, introducing me to a world I'd only seen in movies. He made me feel special, sophisticated, like I could be more than what I came from. That was the trap. Not Daniel himself, but what he represented. Escape. Transformation. Proof that I could be someone different, someone better. My father saw through it immediately. The first time I brought Daniel home for dinner, Dad barely said 2 words. Just watched him with those quiet, knowing eyes that had seen everything the ocean could throw at him. After Daniel left, Dad pulled me aside in the kitchen. Lena, be careful with your heart. Some people collect hearts like trophies. They don't treasure them. They just want to say they have them. I rolled my eyes. Dad, you don't even know him. That's the problem, he said. I don't think you do either. But I didn't want to hear it. Because Daniel made me feel like I mattered. Like I was worth something beyond this small town, beyond the smell of fish and bread, beyond the pitying looks from city people who thought we were quaint. 6 months later, he proposed. Not with a question, but with a statement. Lena, I want you to be my wife. But my family, they have expectations. Standards. You understand. I nodded, even though I didn't. Not really. What I understood was that I loved him. And love, I thought, meant being willing to change. The night before I moved in with him, before the wedding, before everything fell apart, my mother came into my room. She was holding something red, silk, worn soft from years of use. "This was your grandmother's," she said quietly. "She gave it to me when I married your father. Now I'm giving it to you. It's a red scarf. Beautiful. The kind of red that catches light and holds it." It smelled like her perfume, jasmine and wood smoke and something indefinably home. "Keep this," she whispered. "No matter where you go, no matter who you become, this will remind you of home." "Mom, I'm not becoming someone else. I'm just growing up." She smiled sadly. "Sometimes growing up means growing away. Just promise me you won't forget who you are." I promised. I meant it. I had no idea how easy it would be to break that promise. Eli was the hardest goodbye. He cornered me in the hallway the morning I left, my bags already packed, Daniel's car idling outside. "Lena," his voice was breaking, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You're already enough." I hugged him. "I know. Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to become someone you're not just to fit into his world. That's not love, Lena. Love doesn't ask you to shrink." I pulled away. "You're 22, Eli. What do you know about love?" He looked at me with eyes older than his years. "I know what it looks like when someone I love disappears. And that's what's happening right now. You're disappearing." I left anyway. Daniel's house was beautiful. That's the first thing I thought when I walked in. Beautiful and cold. Everything was white. Marble counters. Cream-colored couches. Glass tables that looked like they'd shatter if you breathed on them too hard. Nothing like the warm chaos of my childhood home where mismatched furniture told stories and every corner smelled like life being lived. This place smelled like expensive candles and emptiness. "This is ours now," Daniel said, wrapping his arms around me. "What do you think?" "I think it's beautiful," I lied. What I thought was, where am I supposed to fit in here? Where's the space for the girl who grew up with sand in her shoes and bread flour in her hair? I met Evelyn the next day. Daniel's mother. She didn't knock. Just used her key and walked in like she owned the place. Which I'd learn later, she technically did. Daniel's name was on the deed, but Evelyn's money had bought it. "Lena," she said, looking me up and down like I was a painting she was considering buying. "How lovely to finally meet you properly." She was elegant. 50s, maybe early 60s, but the kind of woman who refuses to show age. Perfect hair. Perfect clothes. Perfect smile that never reached her eyes. "I've brought some things for the house," she continued, gesturing to bags a driver was bringing in. Just a few touches to make it feel more appropriate. I didn't understand what that meant until I watched her systematically replace everything I'd brought from home. The quilt my grandmother made? Too rustic. The photos of my family? Perhaps in the bedroom, somewhere private. The small painting I'd bought at a street fair? Darling, we have standards. Every item of mine was too something. Too cheap. Too common. Too me. Daniel watched this happen. Said nothing. When I asked him about it later, he shrugged. "She's just trying to help. You know how mothers are." But I didn't. Because my mother had never made me feel like I needed to be someone else to deserve space in my own home. The first dinner party was 2 weeks later. Evelyn insisted. "It's important," Daniel explained, "for people to meet you. To see that I've made a good choice." The way he said it made my stomach turn. Like I was a choice he needed to justify. I wore a dress Evelyn had bought me. Navy blue. Conservative. Nothing like the colorful sundresses I actually loved. She'd also arranged for someone to do my hair and makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. "Perfect," Evelyn said, looking me over.
"You look presentable."
Presentable. Not beautiful. Not lovely. Presentable. Like a house that had been staged for sale. The party was full of people like Daniel. Doctors, lawyers, people who'd never worried about money a day in their lives. They asked where I was from, and before I could answer, Evelyn would jump in. Oh, Lena's from a charming little coastal town. Very quaint. She's adjusted beautifully to city life. Adjusted. Like I was a rescue dog learning to behave. They asked what my father did, and I watched Evelyn's expression tighten.
So I lied.
I said he was in maritime business, which was technically true. He worked on the sea. They didn't need to know he worked with his hands, came home exhausted, smelled like fish. I was ashamed, and that shame felt like acid in my throat. That night, after everyone left, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried. Not because anyone had been cruel, but because I had been cruel to my father, to my family, to myself. I pulled out the red scarf from the drawer where I'd hidden it and pressed it to my face. It still smelled like home, but home felt like a lifetime away. Daniel knocked softly. You okay in there? I'm fine, I called out. You were great tonight. Everyone loved you, but I hadn't been great. I'd been a performance. And worse, I'd been a coward. The calls from home started coming less frequently after that. Eli called every week at first. Lena, guess what happened at the docks today? Dad caught the biggest haul in months. He's pretending not to be proud, but you should see his face. Lena, Mom made your favorite stew. She made way too much. I think she forgot you're not here to eat half of it. Lena, Dad asked about you today. He tried to act casual, but I saw him looking at your old room. I listened to every message, felt my throat close up every time, and told myself I'd call back tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. Because every time I heard Eli's voice, I felt the weight of my choice. The guilt of leaving. The fear that if I called, they'd hear in my voice that I'd made a mistake. And I wasn't ready to admit that. Not to them. Not to myself. By the end of the first year, I had become exactly what Evelyn wanted. Quiet. Obedient. Invisible unless called upon. I learned which fork to use for each course. Which topics were acceptable in polite conversation. How to smile without showing too much emotion. How to laugh at jokes I didn't find funny. How to make myself small. Daniel seemed relieved. You're fitting in so well, he'd say. Like that was the goal. Like I should be proud of how thoroughly I'd erased myself. But at night, I'd lie awake feeling like I was disappearing. One conversation, one silence, one compromise at a time. The girl who used to run barefoot on the beach?
Gone.
The girl who laughed too loud and dreamed too big? Buried under layers of appropriate behavior and proper etiquette. My mother sent letters. Not emails or texts. Actual letters, written in her careful handwriting on flowered stationery. Your father still waits by the window every evening, hoping you'll visit. Eli got into a fight defending you when someone spoke badly about your marriage. He came home with a black eye and the biggest smile. He said he'd do it again in a heartbeat. We don't blame you for loving him, Lena. We just wish you hadn't stopped loving us too. I read each letter once, then hid them in a drawer because they hurt too much. I told myself I'd respond tomorrow. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became never. Because what could I say? That I was wrong? That I missed them? That I'd traded my family for a beautiful prison? That felt like admitting failure. And I wasn't ready for that. The red scarf incident happened about 18 months in. I came home from the grocery store to find Evelyn in our bedroom. Not in the doorway. Not in the living room. In our bedroom. Standing by my dresser. Holding my mother's red scarf. This color, she said, fingering the silk with her perfectly manicured hands, doesn't suit your complexion, dear. My blood went cold. That was a gift. From my mother. She smiled that smile. The one that said I'm being kind, but you're being difficult. Then perhaps it's time to let go of childish things. You're part of a different world now, Lena. These sentimental trinkets, they don't belong here. She folded it neatly and placed it on the dresser. Between us. Like a line drawn in sand. I waited until she left. Then I grabbed the scarf and pressed it to my face, sobbing into the silk. Because in that moment I understood. This wasn't about the scarf. It was about erasing every trace of who I'd been. Every connection to the life I'd left behind. Every reminder that I was Lena from the fishing village, not Lena, Daniel's appropriately refined wife. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. My hair was different. My clothes were different. My whole face looked different, tighter, more controlled. Even my laugh had changed. It was quieter now, more polite, less me. I'd spent 18 months learning to be someone else. And I'd succeeded. The problem was I hated her. Daniel started working later. Coming home exhausted. Speaking in monosyllables. Did you call the plumber? Is dinner ready? My mother mentioned you seemed upset. Is everything okay? Never. How are you? What do you need? What makes you happy? Our conversations became transactions. Lists of things completed, problems solved, appearances maintained. One night, I asked him, "Do you ever think we made a mistake?" He turned to me, eyes half closed with exhaustion. Mistake? Leaving everything behind. Choosing this life.
He sighed.
It wasn't a choice, Lena. It was what had to be done. What had to be done. As if our marriage were a business merger, not a love story. As if I were an obligation, not a person he'd once claimed to love. That's when I started walking to the sea. There was a path just 5 minutes from the house that led to the beach. I'd go early in the morning before Evelyn's daily visit, before Daniel woke up, before I had to put on the mask of the person they wanted me to be. I'd sit on the rocks and watch the waves and remember my father's laugh, my mother's humming,
Elias terrible jokes.
the smell of bread and salt and home. One morning, an elderly woman sat down beside me, Mrs. Quinn. She lived next door, had kind eyes and a knowing smile. "You remind me of someone," she said. "My mother?" I asked, startled. She nodded. "I knew her. Years ago. Before she married your father. This town, it's small. Everyone knows everyone." That's when it hit me. Evelyn's house was only 5 miles from my hometown. 5 miles. I'd been living close enough to smell the same ocean air, to hear the same gulls, to walk home if I'd just had the courage. But I'd been too afraid.
Too ashamed.
Too convinced I'd made a choice I couldn't take back. Mrs. Quinn must have seen the shock on my face. "Sometimes," she said softly, "we think we've gone far away when really, we've just been circling the same shore." Her words haunted me for weeks. Because she was right. I hadn't escaped anything. I just built a different kind of prison 5 miles from home. The encounter with Eli happened on a random Tuesday. I'd gone to town for groceries, my first time in years. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe I was hoping to see something familiar. Maybe I wanted to remember who I'd been. The bakery still smelled like butter and sugar. The pier was still dotted with fishing boats rocking gently against the tide. And then I saw him.
Ellie. Taller now.
Broader. But those same eyes that used to beg me not to leave. "Lena?" My name broke on his lips. I froze. Every muscle in my body wanted to run to him, but I couldn't move. "Hey," I managed. "You look grown." He laughed once, painfully. "It's been 10 years, Lena. 10 years. Feels shorter," I whispered. He looked at me, really looked, searching for the sister he used to know. "You never answered my letters." My throat closed. I didn't know what to say. "You could have said hi." The simplicity of it shattered me. Because he was right. It would have taken so little. Just "Hi, I'm okay. I'm thinking of you." But I'd given him nothing. Before I could respond, Daniel appeared. His hand landed on my shoulder. Possessive. Controlling. "We should go." Eli looked at him, then back at me. "So this is him." I nodded, unable to speak. Eli smiled, but it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen. "You look tired, Lena. Take care of yourself." And then he walked away. Down the pier. Getting smaller and smaller until he disappeared into the crowd. I wanted to scream his name. Run after him. Tell him I was sorry, I missed him. I'd made a terrible mistake. But Daniel's hand held me still. Like a leash. That night, I cried in the bathroom where he couldn't hear. Sobbed into a towel so the sound wouldn't carry. Because I'd just seen my brother for the first time in 10 years and couldn't even hug him. Couldn't even say I'm sorry. Couldn't even tell him the truth that I was drowning. A few weeks later, Evelyn fell ill. Nothing serious, she claimed. Just feeling under the weather. But illness gave her new power. She'd call Daniel at all hours. I need soup. I need medicine. I need company. And Daniel, loyal, obedient Daniel, always went. Sometimes he'd stay overnight at her house. She needs me, he'd say when I asked why. So, do I whispered once.
He didn't respond.
Just kissed my forehead like I was a child and left. I moved into the guest room after that. Told myself it was temporary. It became permanent. We became roommates. Polite strangers sharing a beautiful empty house. Then I found the letter. I wasn't snooping. I was doing laundry, checking pockets before washing Daniel's jacket. There was an envelope. Expensive paper. Evelyn's handwriting. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside, one line. Love her if you must, but never forget who you belong to. I sat on the bed, hands shaking, reading those words over and over. Evelyn hadn't stolen Daniel from me. She didn't have to. I had handed him over. Every time I stayed silent. Every time I made myself small. Every time I chose peace over truth. I'd given him permission to choose her over me. That night, I did something I should have done years ago. I dialed my parents' number. My hands shook so badly, I almost hung up. It rang.
And rang.
Then the answering machine. My father's voice, older but unmistakable. You've reached the Hale residence. Leave a message. My throat closed.
Dad, it's me.
Silence. Just my breathing and the sound of ocean waves through the open window. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. The line beeped. I sat on the floor, phone clutched to my chest, sobbing into the red scarf. Because I'd waited too long. And now all I had was an answering machine and the ghost of my father's voice. A week later, Mrs. Quinn knocked on my door.
Pale.
Nervous. Lena, she said softly, I saw Daniel today. He wasn't where he said he'd be. Where was he? She hesitated. With his mother. At the lawyer's office. Something inside me broke. Not from jealousy. From exhaustion. The kind that comes when you realize the war ended long before you noticed. What are they doing? I asked. Mrs. Quinn looked uncomfortable. I don't know for certain, but I heard them mention your name. The letter arrived 2 days after that conversation. Redirected 3 times. Edges worn from travel. My mother's handwriting. Postmark, 2 months old. I opened it standing in the kitchen, hands trembling. Your father isn't well. Please come before it's too late. Too late. Those 2 words hollowed me out. I didn't pack a bag. Didn't leave a note. Just grabbed my keys and ran. 5 miles. That's all it was. 5 miles I could have walked any day for 10 years. But pride, shame, fear had made it feel like 5,000. The gate to my parents' house was rusted. Paint peeling. The jasmine bush by the window still bloomed, wild and fragrant, untouched by time. I knocked. Once.
Twice.
No answer. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. When the door finally opened, it was Eli. Older.
Wearier.
Still my brother. He didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Just stared at me like I was a ghost. You finally came. His voice was hollow. I got your letters, I whispered. I sent them years ago, Lena.
I know.
His face crumpled. And that's when I knew. Before he said the words, I knew. Dad's gone. 3 days ago. The world stopped. Everything went silent except for the sound of waves in the distance and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I'm too late, I whispered. He nodded. Tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry, Lena. But yeah, you're too late. The funeral was the next morning. I wore black. The red scarf around my neck felt like a wound I couldn't cover. People stared, whispered. Some avoided my eyes entirely. I knew what they were thinking. There's Thomas's daughter. The one who left. The one who thought she was too good for us. The one who came back only after he died. When they lowered the coffin, the wind picked up. Sharp, cold, carrying voices I couldn't quite hear. And I swear I heard my father. Not angry. Not disappointed. Just tired. Be sensible, Lena. That's what he'd always said. Be sensible. But there was nothing sensible about the choices I'd made. After everyone left, I stayed. Alone by the grave. The wind whipping my hair, the red scarf fluttering like a wounded bird. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the earth. "I thought love meant choosing. I thought I had to pick between you and him. I didn't know I could have both. I didn't know love wasn't supposed to ask me to erase myself." The wind carried my words away, like it had carried away 10 years of my life. Back at the house, Mom had left a box on the kitchen table. My name written on top in her careful handwriting. Inside, dozens of letters, all addressed to me. Some sealed, some opened and carefully resealed. Dates spanning years. I opened them one by one, tears blurring the ink.
"We heard you're married now."
"Your father hopes he treats you well. He won't say it, but he looks at your photo every night before bed. Eli keeps asking when you'll visit for Christmas. I tell him you're busy, but I think he knows the truth. You're not busy. You're just gone. Your father's health isn't good. The doctor says his heart is weak. But he smiles when he sees your picture. He tells me you'll come home when you're ready. I hope he's right. I hope he lives long enough to see it." And then the last one, dated 2 weeks before he died. The handwriting was shaky.
Weak.
Faded in places like he'd had to stop and rest. "Lena, I don't know if this will reach you. I've written so many letters that never got answered that I'm not sure you're even reading them anymore. But I need to say this, just in case. There's nothing to forgive. You were always my girl. From the moment you were born, you were my whole world. I'm proud of you, not for who you became or what you achieved, just for being you. Come home when you're ready. We'll be waiting. Love, Dad." I collapsed. The sound that came from me didn't even feel human. It was animal.
Raw.
The sound of 10 years of mistakes crushing down all at once. All these years, I'd been punishing myself, convinced they hated me, resented me, had written me off. And they'd been loving me anyway, waiting, hoping, forgiving me before I'd even asked. That night, Daniel called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "I heard about your father. I'm sorry. Are you?" I asked. My voice was cold. "Lena, don't do this." "Don't do what?" "Ask if you actually care?" "You left without a word. You scared me. I left because silence was killing me. Because I couldn't tell where your mother ended and I began. Because I've spent 10 years disappearing and I couldn't do it anymore." There was a long pause. "She's gone too," he said finally. "My mother. 2 nights ago." I felt nothing. Not sadness. Not relief. Just emptiness. "What now?" I asked. "Maybe we can start over." I laughed. It was bitter. Broken. "You can't start over with ghosts, Daniel." He was quiet. Then softly. "I still love you." And for the first time in 10 years, I didn't say it back. Because love without freedom isn't love. It's captivity. And I was finally free. The next morning, I walked to the sea. The same shore where everything began. I brought the red scarf. My last tie to the girl who ran away. I held it up to the wind, silk rippling like water. If I could go back, I whispered, I'd choose differently. I'd choose both. I demand that love let me keep myself. But life doesn't give do-overs. It only gives moments to say, I'm sorry. I still love you. I'll do better. The wind lifted the scarf gently. I let go, watched it dance across the waves, red against blue, until it disappeared. It felt like letting go of everything. The mistakes. The shame. The woman I'd tried to become. And maybe, just maybe, finding the woman I'd always been underneath. When I turned back toward the house, Eli was standing in the doorway. Mom beside him. She looked older.
Frilier, but her eyes still kind.
Still full of love I didn't deserve, but desperately needed. She opened her arms.
And I ran.
Like a child. Like someone who'd been lost for a decade and finally found the way home. I'm sorry, I sobbed into her shoulder.
I'm so sorry.
She stroked my hair. The same way she had when I was small and the world felt too big. You came back, she whispered. That's all that matters. You came back. That was 5 years ago. I never went back to Daniel. He sent letters. I didn't open them. Not out of spite, but because I'd finally learned. Some chapters need to close completely before new ones can begin. I stayed home, helped Mom in the bakery, laughed with Eli on the pier, learned to fish with the early morning cruise, rebuilt the life I'd abandoned. And slowly, so slowly, I rebuilt myself. Not the girl I'd been at 25. She was gone, but someone new. Someone who knew what love was supposed to look like. And what it wasn't. Here's what I learned. Love shouldn't ask you to erase who you are. Real love says, come as you are. Stay as you are. Grow, but never shrink. I thought sacrifice meant giving up everything. But real sacrifice means giving up what doesn't serve you, even if it once felt like everything. My father's grave has fresh flowers now. I bring them every Sunday. White lilies. His favorite. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I hear him. Not the words. Just the feeling. Welcome home, Lena. I smile, through tears every time. Because I finally understand. I never left. Not really. I was just taking the longest, most painful way home. And sometimes, that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to lose everything to remember what actually matters. If you're living a life that doesn't feel like yours, if you've lost yourself trying to earn someone's love, if you're too afraid to go home, this is your sign. It's never too late to come back to yourself. Your people are still waiting. And the red scarf, whatever that means for you, will always guide you home. You just have to have the courage to follow it.